So Darshan Maharaja, I hope I'm pronouncing this correct, has been putting out a lot of information about this scam that's happening in, well, I want to say in Canada regarding the student visa program. And I'm not going to give it enough justice. So the best way to do this would be to bring him in. And I'd love to introduce all of you to Darshan Maharaja. I hope I'm pronouncing this correct. Am I pronouncing that correct?
Yes, you did well.
Okay, thank you. Nice to meet you, by the way. This is my first time talking to you, so this is great. Sometimes we do this live, and it's a fascinating thing. But can you, I mean, without beating around the bush or any of this stuff, what's happening in Canada, and how did this come to be? I know most of my parents are immigrants. They both came to Canada. They went through the immigration process the legitimate way. It was not like a lottery. It was not some backdoor thing. They didn't come over on Roxham Road. They had to make sure there was a merit system. They came over and they were allowed, and then that was that. What's happening with this international student racket, if you could call it that?
Well, the word racket encapsulates it nicely. What's happening is a multi-level, multi-stage, multifaceted scam.
That's what it sounds like to me.
Yes. Now, how it came to happen? The starting point was an idea that most Canadians would agree with. The background was, let's say, about 20 years ago when I came to Canada. Same thing like your parents, there was a point system. So you get points for education, you get points for work experience, and then for things like knowledge of either English or French, and age, because you don't want very old people to be migrating, even though they may be educated, English speaking or French speaking with work experience. But if someone is trying to come here at 60, that's not what we are looking for. Mm-hmm. So it was
it's like a job interview designed in a way.
Yeah. And it was designed that way. But by the time I came about 20 years ago, there were serious problems with it, because the overseas education and work experience were not recognized in the Canadian job market. So the idea was, let's take this international study permit policy and link it with immigration, so that we are bringing people over at a much younger age compared to, let's say, people in their 30s or early 40s, because it was open up to the age of 44. Mm-hmm. Instead of that, let's bring in people at, let's say, 18 or 20 or 22 years of age. Let them come here for studies. So they have a local certification. In the process of studies, they have worked maybe 20 hours on campus, or, during winter and summer breaks, they have worked 40 hours. They have done their co-ops. So now they have enough work experience in Canada. So the idea was to bypass the difficulty that the immigrants themselves were facing, the ones coming on point system. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, this policy was hijacked and made into something that's a completely different beast. So instead of getting, let's say, about 200,000 students a year, now we are getting 900,000 students a year. And initially, the policy was open only to the community colleges, the public colleges. Now all sorts of private colleges have started up. They have what is known as the designated learning institution status from the provincial government.
And how do you get that status? How do you apply for that?
See, once you register a college, you apply to them. Maybe I'm hoping that there is some kind of scrutiny as to what kind of courses you are offering, what kind of curriculum is there for each course, and how it would potentially prepare the student for being integrated into the Canadian workforce. This is the idea. But that again has been hijacked. So you see courses like 15-week course for basic cook level 1, Now, the thing is, in this intended regime, uh, the idea is that once a student finishes the course, then they get a work permit, which can be up to 3 years. And then once they have that 3-year experience of working here, they have a pathway in their technical language to gain permanent residency, which then after a certain time makes them eligible to become Canadian citizens. This is the concept, but because there are so many vitiating factors, the spirit of the policy is being violated left, right, and center. You see colleges so-called operating in strip malls. Even today in the morning, I tweeted out a photo of a college that is in the eastern part of Brampton. Yeah,
I have it here. It's Sunview College. It's just it looks like it looks like a realtor shop shut down, and now it's a college. It's just an office, really. At the end of the day, you've pointed out a bunch of other ones that were like they literally just like it's above a McDonald's. This one, it's not like these like most people when they think these people are coming over, they're going to schools, they're going to college, they're coming over for BCIT or some of the big name colleges in Canada, but these are the institutes, and these institutes are racking in some incredible money, and it is ridiculous. Now this is a little clip from the House of Commons. This is Mark Miller. He's the Liberal MP for immigration. He's the immigration minister, and this is what he had to say.
Look, international students are a credit to this country, Mr. Speaker. They are the future of this country, and they are an asset that is very lucrative, and they are an asset that is very lucrative. And we cannot let them down. Clearly, we need to work with provinces to make sure that they have proper housing, and we have to crack down on agents that are giving them false hope across the country, but let's not make this a partisan.
How many of these agents are giving them false hope? Because I also found this other clip from a podcast that was aired recently, and this is talking about Conestoga University and just how much money they're actually raking in on this, and I want to call it a scam.
Conestoga made $140 million on tuition in the last 16 months. Do you know how many international students they brought in? Conestoga's got like two campuses, right? They're like the size of this building, like they're not huge colleges. 30,000 they brought in 16 months. And so Conestoga is doing what any rational actor in that situation would do. Can we make $140 million if we open up a bunch of one-year, dog shit programs for international students who want to come here and get permanent residence? If the answer is yes, I mean, I don't have to draw the flow chart for you. We do it. And if the answer is no, then we
There's one,
don't.
Nick and I were looking at the enrollment into their hairstyling program. It's a 12-month hairstyling or hairstylist program. And then half the people drop out because what was happening, we came to understand, is they get here, they start taking the class, but then they get a job somewhere. And if they get a job somewhere, that allows them to kind of stay on and get permanent resident status. And so they were kind of just using the course as this alternate immigration.
So this sounds like what they're saying is this is an alternate immigration. This is a way that they can take people from other countries. I know India is a big country that's named in this whole idea, and they're luring people in, saying, "Do you want to go to a new country and have a brand new way of life, and things will be great for you? Just save up enough money, and we'll put you through this." And basically, it's a payola in order to get a work permit, and the government's keen on this. They're calling it a lucrative asset to have these people coming here. But the lucrative asset is going to these institutions. They get their money, they give them a visa, and they tell them, screw off now. How about you go collect food from the food bank or something like that? How prevalent is this?
Oh, Clyde, this issue is so huge that I'm having trouble deciding which point to talk about.
Okay, fair enough. We'll just get into it. Just dive right in.
Now, in that clip about Conestoga College, they said something about the hairstyling program. Mm-hmm. Now, you have to look at the graduation rate, which I understand is publicly accessible data. There's this great lady on Twitter, Justice Queen. I strongly suggest everybody who is interested in this issue, and issues relating to housing and immigration follow her. She came up with this, she dug up that data about this Sunview College. Their graduation rate is 3.2%.
3.2% at Conestoga College.
No, not Conestoga. The Sunview College,
the Sunview.
Which sounds like the name of a bar on a beach resort somewhere.
Right. Or some dive motel on the side of the highway.
Yeah. So their graduation rate is 3.2%, and that's actually pretty decent.
That can't be real.
Compared to a list of another 30 colleges where the rate is 0%.
0%, where they
0% graduation
is
nobody graduated from there. So it requires someone to dig into whether these colleges are just registered, not operating, or actually operating, bringing students over, and still their graduation rate is 0%. These are things to investigate. Unfortunately, our legacy media is not interested in journalism anymore. I may sound very harsh, but I'll give you two examples of this. There was a time early November when I noticed a board at a food bank in Brampton saying no international students. And I posted it on Twitter and it went viral, and I started getting inquiries from all the mainstream media outlets. All of them went there, covered that. They were trying to convert this into an issue of racism or discrimination, which I told them very clearly it wasn't. I have known this food bank for more than 10 years, and I know what the issue is, because if you go to YouTube or TikTok, you will find tons and tons of videos of Indian international students in Canada showing with glee how you can rip off Canadians by just showing up at a food bank and you get food for free. So that's part of the plan when they start out from India, that we won't have to buy food. It's available for free. Canada is such a nice country.
Are they actually advertising that, like, other than the YouTube?
Yeah. You will find hundreds and hundreds of videos on YouTube and TikTok where they are showing their loot.
Loot, they're calling it. Yeah.
Bragging about it. Look how much I got. Like someone who got 6 tubs of yogurt, and there's no way one guy is going to eat that before that food goes bad, right? So it's a separate issue, but they were trying to make this into an issue of racism, discrimination, things like that. But when I tweet about a college that may not exist in reality, it requires someone to investigate. Nobody is interested. Even that tweet went viral, but none of the MSM picked it up. I'll tell you, the college is called Cambie College, C-A-M-B-I-E, Cambie, Vancouver.
That's in Vancouver.
There's a street and bridge, I think.
Yeah.
Cambie. So Cambie College, on their website, the address was of Canada Place. A prestigious address, right? Yeah. And someone forwarded to me a Reddit post saying, this college doesn't exist. And the student who had come here based on admission to that college was now in a stressful situation because he had no college to go to. And he couldn't report it because he thought that he may be deported and probably prosecuted for being part of a scam. So I said, okay, this is the initial information. Let me find out. And then some friends of mine also jumped in, and collectively we put. You go on, online and try to find Cambie College in Surrey. I couldn't find it.
It doesn't exist.
So maybe it exists. I mean, someone local to Vancouver and Surrey needs to dig into this. But none of the MSM have shown any enthusiasm for jumping into this. Same thing with another instance where I saw a flyer of an immigration consultant. Initially, I didn't know it was an immigration consultant, just the phone numbers were given on the flyer, which said that if you are an international student and if you can't finish your course, we can still get you a work permit within days for 3 years work permit. And if we can't get that work permit for you, we will refund your fees. Now, this is illegal. An immigration consultant cannot work on contingent fees, and they cannot offer to refund any part of the fees. So because this flyer was not, it didn't mention that this is an immigration consultant, just the phone numbers were there. Then together, myself and my friends dug into this, found out where the immigration, who it is, first of all, where they are located. And they have an office in India also, in Punjab. So it's as I said, it is a multi-stage, multifaceted, multi-layered racket, scam, where even in India, people are being ripped off. Remember one thing, the 900,000 international students that we got in last year was after a rejection rate of 47%.
47% rejection rate.
Were rejected. This was, I think, reported by Toronto Star in the last few days, where the schools have given admission. The student has an admission letter and all the other papers, like I have enough money to sustain myself and my police record is clear, or whatever else the documents they require. All the documents are in order, and yet the diplomatic mission in India, Canada's diplomatic mission, is rejecting 47% of the applications.
That's just how many applications are coming in.
After that, you have 900,000 international students coming in 1 year. So if they start issuing visas to all, we'll be inundated.
Yeah, that's 1 point something million people. That's unbelievable.
It's basically double. See, at 47%, you are looking at 53, 47. So it's almost 50-50. So you're looking at more than 1.7 million admissions granted by Canadian colleges and universities. Right?
That's unbelievable.
Now, to get into the multi-stage scam, what happens is that sometimes the student who shows papers that he has got the money doesn't have the money. See, I was born in India. I grew up there. I know how those systems work, where if you need a piece of paper to prove something, then you pay for that piece of paper without having whatever is required, right?
Yeah.
So, or sometimes they take loans from loan sharks, or now even the big banks are giving loans for study abroad. But it's basically borrowed money. So when they land here, before they reach the college, because they are coming a couple of weeks before the term begins, before they reach their college, they are looking for a job, and hopefully 2 jobs, because these are poor families, or at least not of sufficient financial standing to spend $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 on one child's education, because you have to multiply by 60 to convert into Indian rupees. So they may be sold off their land, or they mortgaged it. Maybe they had to go to a loan shark or even a big bank where interest will be reasonable. But the kid is in a hurry to repay that loan, because the family exhausted their financial means to send one kid here in hopes that he will or she will get permanent residency. Then they will be able to sponsor us, and one by one, all of us will go to Canada. So they have literally bet the farm on one kid's education. But it is borrowed money. So the kid is here, looking for work now, because all of them are congregating in GTA. There isn't work available for each and every one of them often. Then they work under the table for cash, whatever they can get. In the meantime, they are living in somebody's basement, 15 kids in one basement. That's a major issue here in Brampton, where the city is now trying to bring in some regulation by saying, okay, if you want to rent out your basements, then register with us. There is a very small fee of $300 to register, but nobody will do that, because the moment you register, the city will tell you can't have more than 4 or 5 tenants in your basement. But as a home, plenty of them in there. Clyde, they are sharing mattresses. One mattress is rented out to 2 guys at $500 a pop per month. That is, a mattress space is yielding $1,000 in rent.
It's like third world conditions in Canada.
Yes, it is. It is third world. I grew up in a third world country, Clyde. I'm telling you, it is third world condition. So there are so many aspects to this where, I'm sure you have seen Clint Eastwood's classic Unforgiven, where you watch the movie 3 or 4 times and you are hard put to figure out who the good guy is.
Oh, right, right. Yeah.
There isn't any, except for one small character called Davy. But, a lot of the students are also resorting to underhand deals, and their aim is honest.
Right.
But the means that they are employing are less than that. In the meantime, there are unscrupulous, unlicensed agents in India who are ripping them off. Then even the licensed ones, they are the ones that the college has appointed. They are taking money from the college and also taking money from the applicant. Then there are some, you remember that case of 700 students who had arrived here on fake admission letter.
I don't know about that story. Can you tell me about it?
CBC was reporting that extensively, and all the other outlets also. But they had come here on fake admission letters, and they claimed that they didn't know it was fake. Now, this is how it works. The kid is given an admission letter. It is submitted to the diplomatic mission in India, and they approve the visa. The kid comes here, and then the agent tells them there has been a problem at the college, so please don't go there. I'll secure another admission for you. Then as someone who is already in India, already in Canada, they get an admission to another college saying, hey, I was admitted at this college, but now I want to move to another college. So the second college will give them admission, which is now genuine. Based on that, they'll complete their studies. And when they apply for a work permit is when Canada Border Services Agency wakes up saying, hey, your original letter of admission was fake, so we'll deport you.
Oh, wow.
So there were 700 students who had finished their studies, and they were about to be deported. And then, everybody got involved. Even politicians were there saying, hey, they have been duped, so, let's be lenient here. And then the agent who had given them, one agent who had given them, 700 of them a fake admission letter, he arrived in Canada. I haven't understood why he would come here, because he was immediately arrested. Now he is going to be tried. So there are so many components to this scam. It's a meta scam. It consists of multiple scams that are scams by themselves.
Well, and here's the thing that I find interesting about this story is immediately so many Canadians are seeing this floodgate of people coming into Canada, especially at the time that we're having this unprecedented housing crisis in Canada, and these massive numbers of immigrants. The Liberal Party is saying that they want to bring in 500,000 new Canadians every year through immigration. But they're only willing to build 400,000 homes in the next 10 years. I mean, we can't have that. So Canadians are looking at it like, wait, why? They hear from the politicians, well, it's a lucrative thing. You look into it and you see that it's lucrative only for the colleges, because they're the ones getting the lion's share of all of this. It's not lucrative for Canada or Canadians if you're flooding the place with population. So, but then a lot of Canadians look at these people that are coming over and start blaming them as if they're the cause of all of this. And then it creates animosity in society, and people get, animus is not a good thing. It's not something that we should be promoting. These people are often duped into coming over here thinking that they're going to get a better life, when often they would have been better off staying in India or going to a different country.
See, the thing is that the dream for everyone, the aim for everyone is to gain permanent residency. Mm-hmm. After they finish their studies and after their work permit period is over, they want to get permanent residency. But data shows that only 30% of them do so.
Right.
So 70% of these students are basically chasing a mirage. Now, even that 30% rate is all inclusive, which means students who come at places like U of T or Waterloo or BCIT or all the top tier institutions, their rate is much higher. The students who come for master's courses at those universities is even higher, and those who come for PhD or research-based, programs, theirs is the highest. Mm-hmm. So actually, if you look at the success rate of students at these strip mall colleges, it is abysmally low. Now the numbers are higher there, so the 30% will drop to maybe somewhere between 25 and 28%. But it is still abysmally low. More than 70% of the students at these colleges are chasing a fake dream, which they were given. The question is, where are they going after being rejected? Now, a few months ago, late last year, we learned that about 1 million people holding non-permanent residency, that includes international students, visit visa, and things like that, they decided not to leave Canada.
Oh, so they're just overstaying past their immigration status.
Yeah, they're without status, or in blunt terms, they're illegal.
Right.
So that is, again, you let them in, then a person came chasing a dream, he's not going to let go of that dream. Now, Minister Miller is talking about, legalizing all those who overstayed, those 1 million people. So naturally, they will keep hoping. The thing is to be more selective in who you let in. But unfortunately, the problem is that, first of all, the colleges themselves, this is said to be a $22 billion a year business.
$22 billion.
$22 billion a year just for the educational institutions themselves in terms of fees. Now, the argument is that international students are subsidizing domestic students because of funding cuts by all the provincial governments. Mm-hmm. I've never liked the funding cut argument in any context, because whenever financial crunch happens, the exclusive focus is on the revenue side and never on the spending side. Mm-hmm. So how are you spending the money that you are getting? That has to be also in focus. But beyond that, my argument is this: if international students are subsidizing domestic students, then how is the average domestic student graduating with $25,000 in debt?
That's a great point.
Right? So the money is not going to subsidize the local student, it's going somewhere else. And the money that the international student is paying is not coming from overseas. For the large part, it is coming from working here. So when there are, 5 openings at an entry level, unskilled job in a big box store or even at a small business, and 100 or 500 kids are lined up there, that's where your so-called subsidization of domestic students is coming from. So we are essentially sucking the blood out of the international student and maybe spending it on administrative bloat. Because as I said, the domestic student graduates with $25,000 in debt. So that money didn't go to his education or her education. It went to administrative bloat. It went to having a very highly paid DEI manager or something.
You're not kidding when you say that this is a multifaceted thing. I mean, so for example, when I went to college, so I went to BCIT, great college, by the way, fantastic place, great faculty, teachers are great. But I do remember I paid tuition, but I went for trades, and it's not that expensive. It's actually subsidized by the government. It's not subsidized by international students. But my tuition did include a series of things: access to a swimming pool, to the gym, to all of these other things. And I remember saying to my teacher, like, I travel from out of town to get there every single day. I don't have time to go to the gym. can I just have cheaper tuition and then I don't have access to that stuff? No, it's all included. And these are bloat things like you're talking about. There's a lot of bloat. This is a thing that got popularized in the United States with trying to get people to go to their college by having great sports teams and having all these big events and facilities that people would all have access to. These are just enticing things to try to get new students to the location. But I think it pads the price of the tuition, where most people would prefer to just have a more reasonably priced education. I think is where people would want to be at. So I mean, there's so many different problems here. Like that's actually a domestic issue, because that's whatever, we could deal with that on our own if we wanted to. But this being an international issue, especially concerning this scam around it, are there any efforts from anyone? Because I mean, you've been researching this. Is there like RCMP, any sort of immigration looking into these colleges and investigating to see if, like, are you actually offering anything, or are you just a backdoor for immigration?
To my knowledge, there hasn't been any official endeavor from any arm of the government, whether it be RCMP or CBSA or Immigration Canada, or anyone, even CRA.
Oh, Canada Revenue Agency, yeah.
Because I'll tell you something. If I'm bidding up the price of a house, it's supposed to go for, let's say, $1 million, but I'm saying I'm willing to pay 1.8 million. So I've priced out all the local demand. People who want to buy a house and pay for it from their salaries, I've priced them out, because they can afford 1 million maximum up to 1.2, 1.3. I'm saying 1.8. So I bought that. Then I shoved 20 students in there. So I'm doing well on my investment.
Mm-hmm.
Is it being reported to CRA? Is that income being reported to CRA?
Well, you'd hope so.
Right.
You would hope so. I mean,
maybe not.
That's because, the requirement anyway.
Part of the housing crisis, and this was again another individual guy on Twitter who blew this, and then he was interviewed by MSM and all. But people are producing T4s to qualify for mortgage. That T4 is completely fake. And there is another great Twitter account called a guy called Ron Butler. He said there is a very simple, remedy to this, because any mortgage lender should be allowed to access the, line 15000 from the borrower's or would-be borrower's income tax return, because that's the amount that comes from your T4. They don't need to be given access to the entire return, just that one line. So if I'm declaring $100,000 in income, but on my T4 for mortgage application, I'm saying I am earning 300,000, there will be a mismatch. So you stop mortgage fraud. So that also ties into this international student situation, because it is these so-called investors who are bidding up prices and therefore, contributing their share to the housing crisis, because the average person is priced out of that market. And that is possible because the investor is sure that he can shove 20 students in one house. If you see here in Brampton, there are, individuals posting videos online and all, like the hallway is rented out.
The hallway is rented out.
The hallway is rented out. There is a bunk bed actually. So 2 students are living in that hallway. Then, you don't want the students to cook or anything. You don't want to give them any dining space. So those are partitioned into separate bedrooms. There are rooms without any window, which is against the fire code. All sorts of malpractices are happening. And that is because you get too many international students who may not even be here for education. Their target is, okay, that's another part of the scam, where the student who is here enrolled in one course, they are not here necessarily because they want to make a career in that line of work. They are here because that's where their agent shoved them in to go to Canada, the agent in India. So, you will find someone who is enrolled in a decent college, a community college, in some kind of an automotive engineering course. And you talk to him, he wants to go into media, and typically ethnic media. And he says that I've worked in media back in Punjab, Chandigarh, or whichever city, and I have experience there. But this is the admission I was getting to come to Canada, so I took it. So he will enroll there. God knows whether they are graduating or not, because the college's graduation rate can be all the way down to 0% and nobody cares.
Yeah, and nobody cares. That's the thing I don't get.
Yeah, and then somehow they will manage to get a work permit, courtesy of immigration agents who are immigration consultants, who are promising that even if you can't complete your course, we can get you a work permit, and if we can't, then your money back. So, you have, this is supposed to be for addressing our so-called labor shortages, which I don't believe exist, but let's assume that they do exist. Then, if you have a labor shortage in automotive engineering, and you get a student for automotive engineering who intends to go into media, not automotive engineering, then you haven't filled the labor shortage.
Right.
And because now there are so many of them coming over, you have speculators or so-called investors bidding up prices of homes in places like Brampton, Mississauga, the eastern side of Toronto, or the western side of Toronto. It's a complete mess.
Is there a like a quota for immigration? So you mentioned automotive engineers, or perhaps people who are getting into nursing, or some of these other trades. Is there like a quota that immigration is looking for people in particular fields, and that's why they're making these promises to get into these fields? Or what's the purpose of them saying, yeah, I'm going to get into automotive engineering, but I mean, they could totally come over and just want to get into media in college?
See, when it comes to international students, there is no quota. Nobody is minding the store. Okay, so unofficially they have some kind of numbers. So Globe and Mail reported recently that for they are planning to increase international students even further, beyond 900,000. So by 2021, they are hoping to get 1.4 million. But it's basically up to the individual institution to issue admission letters, knowing that out of every 147 will be rejected. So when it comes to international students, there is no quota as such. Mm-hmm. But if you look at immigration, then there is a quota of 500,000, and then they try to see that we get people with certain kind of education and certain kind of fields.
Okay, so that's kind of what I was getting at. Like, it's the immigration that's looking for the particular fields that people would get into?
Yeah, but there also it's completely bonkers, because every politician you talk to right now will say that we will bring in more people from in the trades who are already qualified in the trades, so they can start building homes. If there is a housing crisis because of immigration, then we will solve it via immigration. This is the basic logic. But if you look at the data in the 2 years from 2020 to 2022, a total of 251 immigrants came who are in the trades.
251 out of 900,000.
In 2 years. So you are looking at over 800,000.
Oh, holy cow. So only 200 some odd in 800,000 people were trades workers. I mean,
Yeah.
so it wouldn't be that hard, actually. Like if Canada wanted more tradespeople to go to India, for example, and put out advertisements saying, do you build houses? Are you certified? Would you like to come to Canada? Right? But that's not what's happening. This international school thing is a completely other beast. And it's like on the from what I'm seeing, correct me if I'm wrong. From what I'm seeing is on the Indian side, you have scam artists that are convincing people that Canada is the place to be. You want to start a new life, family, invest in your one child or your one kid, you know, mortgage your house, take all this money out, borrow it from your in-laws, and get them over there. And then once they're an international student, then they'll be able to bring all the rest of you over, and it's going to be paradise, and it's going to be great, and everybody's going to be happy. And they don't tell you about they don't tell you about any of the dark side of it. And then when they get here, they're met with slumlords. They're stacked in houses. They're given no job opportunities. They're told about scams to scam the social welfare stuff like food banks. And then they're met with animus, and then this is the situation that they're dealt.
Yeah, if you wanted to devise the worst possible policy, you couldn't have done better than this.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
See, so many of them are working for Uber Eats and Skip the Dishes. Crowds of kids going with their e-bikes from Brampton to downtown Toronto every morning, waiting around McDonald's and whatever, food outlets, restaurants and all, waiting for orders. And then in the evening, all of them come back. So which begs the question, when are they studying?
No kidding.
Yeah. It's no longer about education.
No, it sounds like it never was. It sounds like it never, ever was. It sounds like these colleges, of course, these fly-by-night colleges, for anybody who's just tuning in, I got to show this picture again, because it's just like, what is this? This is not a college. This is a strip mall storefront. And this other place that you showed above a McDonald's.
Yeah. Now, Clyde, this one, I think Anderson, right? It
Yes.
actually offers 100% virtual courses.
Online courses. I was going to get to that, because this is something that's even more egregious. They're doing online courses, which you could do. The internet is, I don't know if everybody knows this, but it's the World Wide Web. You can be anywhere on the planet and you can do these things, but they're using it as an excuse to bring people over for immigration. Why would you need to come to Canada to do an online course for a Canadian college or university? I mean, you could do it from anywhere except probably China, because of their great firewall.
Yeah. But okay, let's talk about another aspect of this, which is that all these private colleges, the students who are enrolled there are not mostly eligible for work permit. So then what happens is, once the student completes the course, then they are looking for a transfer to a public college. So that's additional business to the immigration consultants.
Oh, because they have to pay these consultants
now the
for their
kid
services.
needs to be guided through this immigration or educational consultant. So that is additional business for them, for which they charge hefty fees. And I think it was Dr. Michael Skutterud or someone else, I don't remember exactly who, but they dug up data saying that in the preceding 16 months, from January 2022 to April 2023, Conestoga College admitted more international students than all the 15 major universities of Canada combined.
That's insane.
So I'm suspecting that not all of them came from India. A lot of them were already here, enrolled in private colleges, and then managed to land an admission.
So they're
because
they're
they are
just
looking.
swapping around between these scam colleges to each other.
Yeah, yeah. Conestoga is not a scam college; it's a community college.
Oh, okay, so it's not a scam college, but they had
Yeah,
30,000
32,000.
people. 32,000. Is that legit? Like the guy was saying, the campus is the size of like an office building, and they have
Yeah.
32,000 people going through the programs and not completing courses. You said the course completion rate is very low, 3%.
No, that is Sunview.
Oh, that's
That is
Sunview.
Sunview, 3.2%. But if you are at the Sunview Colleges of Canada, one of those, then once your course duration is over, you are looking to get transferred to a public or community college, because that's what makes you eligible for the work permit.
Right. Oh, so okay. So you don't have eligibility with like Sun whatever college.
Sunview or Cambie College or Anderson, although their poster says that you can be job ready in months, but
not permit ready.
That is not permit ready.
Yeah, right.
So they're looking. So again, my suspicion is that those 32,000 students at Conestoga College, not all of them may have come from overseas. Many of them were already here in a private college when their course duration was over. They were looking for a transfer to a community college, which Conestoga is, and then
so this is just the pipeline. This is the way that they operate. It's almost their modus operandi of
yes.
So convince a family to send one of their kids to Canada through this private college. The private college gets you to the point where you're here, where you're legally here on an education permit, but then to get the work permit, you have to go to a community college or somewhere more reputable. So they help you get into that. And then now you have your work permit, now funnel you into a stacked third world house, slum house, and then just move on next.
Yeah.
And then what's happening? What's happening with these students though? After say they go through, they get their college degree, or they don't. Say they drop out, but they have their work permit, and then they're on their path towards citizenship in Canada. What happens to them then?
No, once they have a permanent residency, they are as Canadian as you and I, except that they cannot vote.
Right. And so they're fine at that point. It's just they're treated like absolute trash through this whole system up until they get to that point.
Yeah, but see, the point is this. For very many of these students, the total expense required for the kid to come here and then go through the whole gamut of private college, community college, and find a work permit and then get permanent residency, which was their goal. The expense on this journey is far beyond their means. And again, getting a work permit, that's another part of the scam, because it requires something called LMIA, that is Labor Market Impact Assessment. So the employer has to prove that they were unable to get someone for this position locally. So they need to hire someone who is from abroad. That LMIA is sold to the student.
Sold?
They have to pay. They have to pay for it. And
so this is some black market stuff.
Brace for this, Clyde. It can be anything up to $50,000.
You're kidding me.
Anything up to $50,000. Now, Global News did a 3-part report on this sometime in 2019. Could have been spring or summer of 2019, where they showed that all these fast food franchises and all, their main income is selling LMIAs.
Oh, that's dirty.
So they're not taking the franchise.
for the people that are listening in on this, like I have a little bit of familiarity with this because I have some friends that work in the restaurant business, and they have, I'm talking private restaurants, like small time operations, but restaurants, they require a lot of people, and you can't always find staff for them. And sometimes you'll find someone who's got a work permit, but they want to switch jobs, and their work permit's tied to a particular location. So in order to get them to work for you, you have to first prove that nobody's applying for the job. You have to run it in the newspaper. You have to have signs everywhere. You have to pay for advertisement. There's like, if you're doing it legitimately, this is what you have to go through, right? There's a whole process. And if nobody then applies and you can't fill the position, then you can hire this other person that wants to take the job. And yeah, it's a big deal. And then not only that, you're responsible for that person, right? As a business, and there's responsibilities that are tied to this. So you're telling me that there are organizations out there like fast food franchisees that are using this system, and they're using it as a commodity and selling it to these immigrants?
It's not a new thing. Back in 2007 or 2008 is the first time I heard about this, and the going rate was $3,000. Now it is between $40,000 to $50,000. And so getting back on track, the family borrowed money. The child came here, worked their butt off to repay that loan before their course is over. Then they need an LMIA. So again, they are looking for $50,000, which they owe to somebody. They don't have it with them.
Yeah, they don't have it.
Right? So,
and you can't get a bank loan in Canada for some scummy like side deal payola. Like that's not something hey TD, I got to pay off this guy for my immigrant. Come on. No. So it's like slum. Obviously these are like loan sharks that they're going to. So it's putting them in way worse situation.
So then the 3-year work permit period is basically spent repaying that $50,000 loan.
It's an indentured servant at this point.
Indentured servant at that point, right? So the point is this: by the time they get permanent residency, they are in absolutely no position to advance financially or materially in their lives. They have been sucked dry. You are coming here at the age of 20, and then the next 6 or 7 years you have spent being exploited by, and these are mostly people of the same ethnicity as the student.
Oh, okay. So it's people that are from that area. They know the system, and they're the ones exploiting. These aren't like.
No, another angle to this is because of the language barrier. See, students coming to Canada for studies are supposed to be reasonably proficient in English, but the certificate for that can be bought in India.
Right. And I'm presuming that this isn't just happening with India. Obviously, we see a lot of people from different communities, Filipinos, people from other parts of Southeast Asia or Africa, other areas of the world that people are coming over on these permits.
Yeah, but since majority of the students are from India, we are talking about India.
Right.
In January of 2019, Niagara College publicly announced that they will test all their international students from India for English, even though they have that certificate. They said we are going to test them again because so many of them are unable to follow the course instructions in class. They just don't know English. So because of that language deficiency, this young person has no option but to get employed with someone who knows their mother tongue.
Right.
And I know a fair bit of Punjabi, and in Indian languages, always there are a lot of variations within the language, the local dialects. So the rural dialects, again, which can be very varied, the dialects are very different from the written language. So I can make out that these, some of these kids are coming from very remote rural areas. They are not speaking Punjabi as it is written.
Right.
They are speaking a local dialect. So their language limitation is very severe. So they cannot go and work for a place where the language of communication is purely English. They simply cannot function in that environment. So they naturally go to people who speak their language, sometimes even their dialect. And then, the employer, if they are unscrupulous, then they will exploit them to the hilt. And I have heard about cases of sexual exploitation of girl students. So all that happens, the larger society doesn't know because it's all happening inside a ghetto.
Right. These are isolated communities where you don't have.
They are not interacting with the outside community.
Oh man, this is devastating.
Yeah, it is.
Because like for the average Canadian, like looking at it from the outside or from within Canada and looking at it at this situation, they're just looking at an influx of people coming in and going, what's happening? What's happening to the country here? And they're seeing entire like new communities opening up that are isolated, that don't communicate with other communities. And people obviously, like, concern comes in, and then as soon as there's any concern, the race card comes out, and you're a racist if you say anything about it. But sometimes from a point of concern, like, is there bad stuff happening? Like, do we want to allow these things to happen within our borders? I mean, we're supposed to be the civilized society, the West, the free world, all of these things. But like, this is so reminiscent. It reminds me so much of what happened to the Irish when they first started coming over to North America, the indentured servitude, all of these things. And a lot of the history has been, for better word, whitewashed, and people don't really pay attention to that. It's a darker part of our past. But like, if we're still doing that, we need to really address that. Because here's the thing that I'm very concerned about. If the first experience of somebody who comes to Canada is so awful, then when they do finally become a citizen or become a permanent resident, what sort of animus would they have towards the general population of Canada? Like, you guys had it so good, I had to fight and I had to go through all of this crap, and you guys did nothing for me, even though we didn't know any of this was going on. So,
including human trafficking.
Including human trafficking.
Yes. See, I am from the Indian state of Gujarat, so the language there is Gujarati. And, there are three main newspapers throughout the state. And one of them carried a front page warning to parents to think twice before sending their daughter to Canada for studies, because they would be at risk of being trafficked.
That's terrible.
Yeah. So, because this has, this has become such an obsessive objective to get as many international students as they can, because as Minister Miller said, big box stores are looking for cheap labor. That's also one thing that he said live on in an interview. And of course, they are lucrative assets. It's become obsessive. They are not seeing anything beyond the money part of this. They're not thinking of people as humans. So, 1.4 million by 2027, how bad is it going to get before you guys realize that, there's something wrong here?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, on multiple fronts, you are creating huge issues that will take us a generation to tackle.
if only that. I mean, so my mother, she came from Scotland, and you know, there are things that you know, Scottish people had to endure, and they know. Of course, left that in the old world. That's a thing. But as soon as, so my mom, when she first came over, they landed. She was very young, but my grandparents, they were. They came over and they landed in Quebec, and the first memory that they have, my mom has, is being chased by the French kids and them shouting English, English, and like wanting to beat her up. And so like these are the things. Needless to say, they left Quebec and they ended up settling in Ontario. But like, yeah, these are things that people will never forget. Like the first memories when they come to a place. And you can't just make that go away. You can't make that go away and say, oh, well, bygones are bygones now. I know I was human trafficked when I first got here and it was a horrible experience. Yeah, right? Like this isn't what we should be doing as a nation if we want to bring people over. We want to bring people over because they want to become Canadian. Because they have an idea that Canada is going to be a great place, and this is the identity that they want to have, an identity of, you know, and of course everybody has their cultural identities from wherever they're from. I mean, Scottish on my side, my dad's American. I've got a lot of Americanisms about me and my personality and all of that stuff, and that's great, that's fine. But at the end of the day, we're all Canadian, and this is what we came here for. I find that these policies are really endangering that sort of mindset. And if we don't have like a homogeneity of ideology, the Canadian mindset, for example, it doesn't have to be ethnic. Nobody said that, but like, if we don't all see eye to eye and want to be somewhere, how is this going to work as a nation? And right now, they're talking about increasing our population by 60 million people in the next several years.
Yes.
At what point do people not want to come? Like, is there any echoes coming from India of people just saying, no, Canada's crazy, I wouldn't want to go there?
Yeah, last quarter, I think Q3 of 2023, which is the main one for applications for international students because of the fall semester. The applications for study in Canada from India dropped by, I believe, 40%.
So the applications coming in dropped by 40%.
And this was long before the spat with India at the government level blew up, when Prime Minister Trudeau said that, you know, agents of Indian government were responsible for the killing of Hardeep Nijjar.
I think that was just politicization of something stupid.
Yeah, it was. But the point here is that the drop happened before that, that whole chapter.
Right.
So it wasn't like it, the increased tensions between Canada and India led to a drop. No, the drop happened before that. So a lot of people are realizing that this isn't a place worth going to. And think of this, we are now having hundreds of thousands of young, impressionable people who are absorbing the message that the only way to get ahead in Canada is by doing something wrong.
Oh, and that's never good.
Right? That you become an investor and then buy a house and shove 20 tenants in without thinking about how they are going to live or is it safe for them or not. A lot of them get into crime, especially drug smuggling or drug peddling or whatever. Girls are lured into trafficking, sex trade. So, this is the message that as a society we are giving them, that if you want to get ahead financially in Canada, if you want to be well settled, if you want to have all the comforts that you aspire to, then the only way to achieve that is not via hard work or honest work, but by doing something wrong. That's the message we are giving to hundreds of thousands and probably a couple million young, impressionable people right now.
Well, and what else would they assume? I mean, you come to Canada and the hard work doesn't pay off. and they're being exploited in these ways. It's unbelievable. So this video dropped, and I'd like to pop this up. This is a video of Chrystia Freeland being interviewed, and well, she's at a press conference, and then she's asked about why the government didn't lower immigration levels when it had been warned about housing. The housing levels couldn't keep up with the immigration growth. So I'll just play this.
Documents obtained by Canadian press show your government was warned that housing construction had not kept up with population growth, largely because of Canada's immigration targets. Why did your government not heed that warning and lower immigration levels?
Thank you for the question, Simon. And let me say this. As a country, Canada is probably the country in the world which is the most welcoming of new Canadians, which is the most welcoming of immigrants. And as finance minister, I have to say that is a huge economic strength. It is a real driver of our country's economic growth. And at a time when all of the industrialized countries in the world are facing huge demographic challenges, we are extremely fortunate as a country that we have the social capacity to welcome immigrants. You are quite right that if we want to be a country that welcomes new Canadians, and I strongly believe that's the right thing for all of us, we have to build more homes faster. And that's one of the reasons I'm here. Our government is totally committed to getting more homes built for Canadians. You have seen that unrelenting focus for weeks and weeks and weeks, for months and months and months.
So obviously that clip, she's known for being allergic to answering questions directly, but she won't address the fact that the government knows that the housing infrastructure, building houses, we can't keep up with the rate of immigration. That these are their targets, right? These aren't just willy-nilly numbers. These are their targets. But she said she's just bounding on these platitudes of Canada is a very welcoming country. Now you're painting a very different picture here, that Canada isn't so much of a welcoming country, but people come here on a scam, and for the most part, Canadians are being scammed, as well as the immigrants that are coming here on that end. What is the solution to this? How would we be able to fix this problem? I mean, so many, like you said, it's multifaceted. There's really so many angles to this. Where do we even start?
See, I'm very clear on this. Step one, shut down the study permit program.
Shut it down
completely. Okay. Shut it down completely.
Wow, completely.
Then build a new one from scratch. And that has to incorporate all the safeguards against the various types of malfeasance that we have seen so far. I would put the cap on individual educational institution at, international students should not be more than 10% of your student body or 30% of your tuition revenue. Whichever is hit first, you stop.
Right.
Because international students' fees are double or triple. For example, at University of Toronto, the average domestic student in engineering faculty will pay something like $16,000 or $17,000 a year in tuition, and the international student pays north of 60,000.
Right.
So that's almost 3.5 times, or nearly 4 times, right?
Doesn't that incentivize these places to pull in international students rather than domestic students?
Yeah, then you get into the whole funding cut argument.
Right.
Nobody is looking at the spending part, as I said. So, immediately your solution has to be that international students cannot be more than 10% of the total student body of any institution, and private colleges should not exist. I mean, they can exist, but they cannot take international students.
Right.
If somebody wants to come here to study, it has to be either at one of the universities or community colleges. And even they cannot take international students more than 10% of their student body, or 30% of their tuition revenue, whichever happens first.
That's bold. Do you think there would be any sort of political support for that? Because how many of these politicians are on the take? And that's usually the question right there. Because I mean, you hear a politician get up and say, these are lucrative assets. I mean, is he looking at his portfolio? I don't know. I mean, I'm just speculating, and I'm not throwing an accusation out, but I'm what sort of, especially when they're as lucrative as they are, and we see these institutions are pulling in these record profits, and they're doing it in this, like you said, malfeasance sort of way. Where's the political will, or just the political will to shut this stuff down?
See, first of all, the narrative has to change, where it becomes impossible for someone to paint this measure that I'm proposing as racism.
Right, because that's definitely where they're going to go first.
Right, so that environment has to be created where you show people that it is actually racist to bring these young people in, and then make them go through all this suffering, living in subhuman conditions, and having zero financial prospects for the rest of their lives. How many of these kids are going to be able to own a home? Because their course duration was spent repaying loan in India. Then their work permit duration is spent repaying the loan that they owed for getting that LMIA. Mm-hmm. And then they are going to get some kind of a minimum wage or low wage job. Meanwhile, even after all the drop in housing prices, it's way beyond the reach of most people. They are not going to be able to even dream of owning a home. How are they going to put their kids through, post-secondary education? We are creating a permanent underclass, because if the kids who are coming in won't make a headway in their lives, and because of that, even their children won't make headway in their lives, we are building a permanent underclass. So it is racist.
Well,
as I see it, the study permit policy is racist.
So I mean that's hard to say, because they're doing it they're doing it largely to Indians at this point. And you said that a lot of the people that are perpetrating these things are of their same. A lot of them speak the same language. I understand in India there's 26 different languages. It's extremely. I've met some business people when I spent time in Japan, living in Japan, that were in the IT world from India. Of course, stereotype, IT world, India, yeah, whatever. But my friends from there, they always told me, yeah, in India, in the cities, in the offices, people would speak English with each other, because it's just so.
Yes.
It's the common denominator. Everybody would speak that English as the way to go. But obviously, once you're in the IT world and you're educated and all that, the proficiency would be so much higher than we're talking about with these kids from rural areas that are just they're hoping on a wish. What are the chances for these people to make it in India? Because I keep hearing stories about people from India that are saying, I'm moving back, even though I've educated myself in Canada, I've done all this stuff, I've done okay for myself, but my prospects look better in India because I speak the local language, I have business savvy now, and there's more opportunity there than there is even here.
Very true. Now, because every society has many strata, but having said that, the sheer number of strata in the Indian society is absolutely dizzying.
Okay.
So just to give you one simple example, how to group them into two categories. When I watch some TV show or talk show or some entertainment program from India and even from Pakistan increasingly, ostensibly it can be in Hindi or Urdu, but more than half the dialogue is in English.
Mm-hmm.
That is the happening stratum. And then when I go out here in Brampton and I see these international students, mainly from Punjab, also from Gujarat, and now I'm seeing some from southern Indian state of Kerala, but not counting those from Punjab and Gujarat, I hear them conversing in chaste vernacular. Very little English in it. Mm-hmm. That is the non-happening stratum. So that is the stratum from which we are attracting international students, not from the happening stratum.
Right.
People who don't see a hope for themselves in India are betting the farm and then coming here to make a better life, only to be exploited, but they didn't know that.
Right. And like, so I've heard about the caste system in India. Is that still a thing? Like, no, so that's not a thing. There is upward mobility in India. So like
you will find in offices, you will find people of all different castes. I mean, nobody even if I look at someone's last name, mm-hmm. I'll probably know where he is in the caste hierarchy, but it has ceased to matter.
Oh, it doesn't matter
in
anymore.
Cities. Yeah, in the cities and in the happening stratum, it doesn't matter.
Oh, okay.
But that's not where we are getting the international students from, and even increasingly, immigrants. There are so many going back because they said life is better in India because you can hire a maid for the equivalent of $50 a month. Then you don't have to do your laundry and vacuuming and what all dishes. And somebody comes twice in the day and does all that for $50 a month. So life is at a different level of comfort there if you are well placed.
If you're well placed.
Otherwise, it's a grind. Now, person who lives a life of grind will think of coming to Canada.
Understood.
Now, nothing against that. If they are able to, make headway here, nothing against that. I'll be happy. But we are just making them into, indentured labor.
Well, yeah, and that's what I'm seeing, and this is the kind of dialogue that I really want to get going in Canada, because the narrative is always, you bring up immigration and if you're against mass immigration or whatever the contemporary plan is, it's a story of racism. Obviously, it's harder when you're beating this drum because your heritage is from India, so, and it's undeniable. It's very obvious, but at the same time, like this is just a way of shutting down conversation. But the story that really needs to be told is the exploitation here. Like people are coming here, and again, like I said, when their first experience in Canada is this exploitation, it's not going to drive them to want to be Canadian. And like you were talking about the strata of the conversation. It's not happening in English. It's not happening in French. It's happening in other dialects. It's happening in this way. They're not mixing with other people. They're not mixing with the other ethnic groups and Canadians and all of that. And it's creating separated groups in society, and that's never good for society. Because that's where animus comes from, and like we saw recently in Surrey, there was a referendum, not a binding referendum, but there was a referendum to form a state of Khalistan within Surrey, British Columbia. I mean, that's the inevitability of it when you have groups that don't feel they're part of the nation. They'll want to create their own nation if they have a large enough number of them. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't be welcome, but what I'm saying is they should want to be Canadian, and that's the goal here. is, yeah, of course, welcome people in. But we've just got to a point where it's just gone so crazy. It's gone so crazy, but there's a different story to be told than what people think on the surface. And this idea of a bunch of white people saying they're taking our jobs and shooting guns at the sky. I mean, that's not what's going on. Like, I really want to have these conversations with people to say, like, look, if this is the way it's going, this is unsustainable. We can't do this. We can't do this for economic reasons. We can't do this for socioeconomic reasons, as well as ethical reasons. We can't allow this to happen and then turn a blind eye to it. You're the first one to ever come to me and explain this whole story, but yet, where's the media?
Oh, they are stuck in their rut. Just as I told you, even that food bank story, they tried to make it into something about racism and discrimination because they can't see anything. They've got a hammer. So everything looks like a nail to them.
Yeah.
Right? Now, if you manage it properly, the whole, numbers game of how many people are coming in versus how much infrastructure we have. Everybody talks about housing, but it's also about healthcare, about schools, about roads, about all sorts of services and amenities, including water supply and sewage. Mm-hmm. So, one of the greatest authors that I have read is Robert Pirsig, who is generally unknown, but in the scholarly circles, he's considered one of the biggest intellectuals of the 20th century. He wrote only 2 books. The first was Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. And the second
book,
was...
actually, yeah.
Yeah, the name is quite well known.
Yeah.
It's a pain to read because the first 100 pages are like absolutely atrocious. There is so much of Greek philosophy and the philosophers that you haven't heard about. So he isn't talking about Aristotle, Socrates, Plato, etc.
Right. It's like reading Ayn Rand when it's not fiction. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. He's talking about, Heraclitus and Anaximander and all those philosophers. So it's quite a painful read. But his second book, Lila, in that, one of the main ideas that he has given is that you have to always strike a balance between continuity and change. Because if there is no change, then you have stagnation.
Yeah.
And if too much change happens too quickly, then a sense of identity is lost. That's what is happening right now in Canada. We are losing our sense of identity of what it means to be a Canadian. Regardless of skin color, race, ethnicity, language, religion, sexual orientation, gender identity, whatever it may be, there needs to be a core identity that everybody subscribes to. And a nation is made of people who have a sense of shared destiny. We are losing both. We are losing our core identity and we are losing a sense of shared destiny where everybody wants something so much at divergence with what others want that there cannot be any common ground between them. And this excessive influx of international students and temporary foreign workers and immigrants is a major factor in that. Mm-hmm. Coupled with our policy of multiculturalism, about which I have written and spoken extensively because it is completely misguided, misconceived notion. Because, multiculturalism is when one person can occupy more than one cultural space, the same person. Mm-hmm. So if you go to an Indian restaurant and, eat palak paneer, which is like the gravy and or curry and garlic naan, and then you pat yourself on the back that I'm multicultural. No, you are not, because you are multicultural when you can prepare those dishes.
Right.
Right. So our multiculturalism is at such a surface level that it has degenerated into multipoliticalism, where the immigrant who comes in still lives the political space of the country of their origin, which is why you saw the rioting in, was it in Calgary or Edmonton or maybe both the cities?
Yeah,
between two factions of Eritrean immigrants who took out a procession and then clashed with each other. Now, whatever is happening in Eritrea is of zero relevance here. It may be relevant to you, but don't bring it in the public sphere.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Same thing happens with people of all origins. Like even in here in the border of Mississauga and Brampton, we had a confrontation between two groups on Diwali.
Yeah, Indian groups. I don't understand. I don't understand the conflict, but that's what's so shocking to me is I don't understand what this conflict is. There's no history of it in this country. Why is it happening in a parking lot in Brampton, Ontario?
It's because the politicians seeking the path of least effort will promote multipoliticalism as part of multiculturalism. Because it's the easiest thing to do. It requires zero effort to say that I stand with community, right? Mm-hmm. And then because of ethnic silos, there are entire ridings that will be dominated by voters of one particular ethnicity or one particular national origin. So then they start pandering to them. So we are losing our sense of core identity and our sense of shared destiny because of the sheer numbers of immigrants, and that is why it needs to be brought under control. And international students are a big part of that.
Absolutely, and I mean I'm a firm believer of if you go to another place, you leave your conflicts at home, right? And yes. and that's it. You've left the old world. When my mother's family left Scotland, they left all their gripes with the English behind. You know what I mean? And they became friends with people who were immigrants from England, right afterwards. And that's a long-standing one. I mean, these are all long-standing. Obviously, there's a lot of history with a lot of these conflicts, but the concept of coming here, I've always thought was you let it go. You let it go when you come here, and then we all join together to build a new society. Because if you want those conflicts, you know where you can get them. They're only a plane ride away. They're right there. They're not going away. You can go get them.
Yeah, true.
This is a fascinating conversation. I can't thank you enough for coming on here and talking about this.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
And I find it really interesting because we're really at a difficult time for this conversation to be taking place, because again with the whole racism card that gets pulled out every time you come in with real conversation that's trying to get to the real points. And obviously, for different reasons, people will pull the race card because there's some people that want to perpetuate it. They're profiting from this scenario. So why would they want that? And they're doing well because of it, or other people are politically benefiting from it. So this is something.
As I said, it's the only hammer they have got. Like, you remember when COVID began and people started wearing masks, mm-hmm. Politicians came out saying it is racist. Then they made it mandatory. So you are forcing me to be a racist. By force of law, you are saying that I must act in a racist manner because you said it is racist.
Right, because they said masks are racist at first. Right, and then
wearing a mask is racist.
But they're allowed to change their mind, aren't they? That's their gig. They're allowed to change their mind on anything on a dime. I've got some super chats of people that wanted to either ask questions or pop in their 2 cents before we get out of here for the day. And again, thank you so much for joining. Really great conversation. I think I need to digest a bit of this and then have you back again so we can talk further on this, because this is such we're just like the tip of the spear on this whole thing at this point. But this is it's unbelievable. Let's get into some of these. We've got got to make sure that I get right to the first one that popped up. We've got Will Kowalchuk for $10 saying, we have to realize our country is on the forefront of technology, and as a team we can make life good for all of us if we can do what we do. I think that was an older super chat. Vovin for the $5 super chat says, big backlog on student aid because application processing this year. SABC just hired a bunch of English as a second language DEI types too. So I wasn't aware of that. That's more of this going on. Katanada with the 279 super chat says, hey Clyde, the feed is cutting in and out. Okay, so part of the stream got a little choppy. The video will be clear, and we'll post this again early next week so everybody can get a chance to view this conversation because it's very fascinating. Trish Prue, the $5 super chat. Wow, this is an eye-opening interview. A lot of information to take in. Yes, this is a lot of information to take in. And again, I don't think we're pulling it off in even this conversation. We'll have to come. We'll definitely have to revisit this one because that's definitely. I mean, it's just such a big topic. Michael McLean with the $20 super chat. Anyone bringing issues and conflicts to Canada from homeland needs sending back to their original country. If already Canadian-born, made to do community service while basic living covered by their labor, regardless of color or heritage. Yeah, as long as it's, I mean, I have a problem with anything that's like, it's funny because they always say this, like, we need to get rid of systemic racism. Well, yeah, telling white people that they're privileged and other people aren't, that's a form, you know what I mean? Let's get rid of that stuff too. Anything that's systemic, if there's any systemic racism, I'm with you, I'll fight it. Let's get rid of all of that if it's actually something that's in the law. Vovin, also with a $5 super chat, says, ask yourself why all of the addicts on BC streets are almost always white or native. Why do they want to tranify and dope up our kids in schools? Yeah, that's another issue that we didn't even dive into today. Definitely an issue. Steve's Hyde with a $5 super chat. We should get the narrative going that mass immigration is in fact racism, or is racist. Again, against the immigrants themselves. It's a big lie. Absolutely a big lie. Penny D with a $5 super chat. Thanks, Clyde. Have a great night. Hi, chat. Thank you so much. Penny D also saying hi, guest. Thank you so much. Guest, of course, tonight, Darshan Maharaja. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. I'm doing my best with that. I'm terrible at pronunciations, and dyslexia never helps. Robert McFallon with a $10 super chat saying, wow, what an eloquent, awesome guest. Bless Darshan for enlightening us. Just wow. Absolutely, just wow. This has been an amazing conversation. Again, I can't thank you enough, Darshan, especially at such short notice. We just had a back and forth only a couple of days ago. Invited you on, and you were so gracious to join us this evening. But this is great because this is the beginning. Well, this is the extension of the dialogue to push forward to set things right along this and get the political will. I'm definitely going to be raising this tomorrow. I'm going to be meeting with a politician, young aspiring politician in Squamish, British Columbia, and he wants to be part of the Conservative Party. So I'll be discussing this with him at length tomorrow if I have time. But this is the kind of thing I'm encouraging people to do. Get involved, get out there, have these conversations with people, listen to these conversations online, bring it forward, let more people know about these things, because these are issues that, people have a surface level understanding of what they think things are happening. But once you hear the real story, it's just mind-blowing how different the actual story really is at the end of the day. And there's a lot of empathy to go to a lot of people that are victims of all of this stuff, whether they're Canadians or they're the immigrants themselves that are coming over, which is it's tremendous to even hear about, but we never hear this side of the story. So again, Darshan, thank you so very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you so much.
And,
thank you.
Anything else you want to add before we end the stream for the evening?
Well, I have a website, darshanmaharaja.ca, and a podcast called Our Canadian Journey. It's on Spotify, it's on Google Podcasts, and on Podbean. And I have a YouTube channel, Darshan Maharaja. So anybody who wants to catch up on my views on this or any other issue, then they can do that there.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll make sure that the link is in the description for everybody to view. Check out the website, check out the YouTube channel, and definitely get a follow over there on Twitter, or now formerly Twitter, now X. You're updating so often, it's hard to keep up with all the updates that you have. Amazing stuff that you're pulling out, doing tremendous work. With all kinds of other people bringing top-tier journalism to Canada. If the media is not going to do it, I guess the rest of us have to. So we got to get on this. But yeah, again, once again, thank you so much, Darshan, for joining this evening. Stick along on the line. I'm just going to end the stream here. So thanks everybody for joining in this evening. I want to just encourage people, get out there and have these discussions with people, because this is a message that really needs to resonate with a lot of people. It needs to be heard far and wide, because I think they took our jobs sort of approach to this is a little one-sided. We should really have empathy for people on both sides of this. There's complex solutions to complex situations. So everybody, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one. Keep on trucking.